Good morning, everyone. It's August 16th, 2020, here on the Diplomatic Back Channel, the beautiful Potomac River. So today it's going to be about dispelling hoaxes. You never know until you check all the facts out if these things that grip the internet are hoaxes or not. But it turns out that this thing with Millie Weaver and Gavin Gavin Wentz is a hoax. I don't know if Millie is a victim of the hoax or not, but everyone else certainly knows it's a hoax. And we'll go through what brought my suspicions to this being a hoax, and then the proof that it is a hoax. So but it does. When InfoWars does this, it makes real reporters look very good. So in a way, I thank Alex for doing this kind of thing. You get a little bit of super chat in the short term, but it really hurts your reputation in the long run when you do something like this. When you have 3 satellites, Alex has 3 satellites, and you pull this stuff on people, and then people discover it's a hoax. They don't like it, and they don't watch you anymore. So if you're not familiar with the timeline here, let's go through the timeline. Let's walk through the timeline. So I meet with I meet with Bergy, Private First Class Bergy, on this story called ShadowNet, okay, in December of last year. Now, Jason Goodman, to his credit, was the first to interview Bergy, and it did some pretty good little, kind of flybys on this ShadowNet story. ShadowNet's a tool, it's a weapon, it's a cyber weapon being used by NATO to affect the 2016 election. Big story. But Jason wasn't able to go down to Florida, wasn't able to go to Bergy's home, wasn't able to interview him in depth. He was more constrained to the time, but he did some good interviews with Bergy on the ShadowNet tool. This is a weaponized tool, a cyber tool, but it's still a weapon nonetheless. But I went there. Got to know Bergy. I was in Florida. I tried to do a couple of follow-up meetings as well. But I was going and checking out everything Bergy told me. I was working with people who were looking at real sources, like Harry the Greek up in Cleveland, who was running things down, was actually running these sources down, producing the actual facts for the story. So that was December of 2019. I think InfoWars got a hold of the story sometime in February. And I remember telling Bergy when we did in my chat session with Bergy, I said, hey, let's raise money for you to go to Washington, D.C. He really wanted to go to Washington, D.C. He wanted to talk to Dan Bongino. He wanted to talk to Jeanine Pirro. He wanted to talk to Judge Jeanine. He wanted to talk to all the Fox anchors. Tucker Carlson, he had some communication. Hannity, he had some communication. So he was trying to get to Washington, D.C. And so we were saying, hey, Patreon, you should sign up for Bergy's Patreon. And Mark Kulak, a person who's sort of a sister channel of ours, a research channel, did an online sort of fundraiser for Bergy and raised about $645. And I talked to one of the people this morning who gave $300 for Bergy to go to Washington, D.C. She doesn't want to be identified, but she's the same person who sponsored our charrette in San Diego. We call her Lady Scripps, but everyone who went to the 3 different charrettes knows who I'm talking about. So that $300 is what went to go to fund Bergy to go to Washington, D.C. He did actually meet with Dan Bongino. I followed up with him to make sure the story got through. I saw the picture of him and Dan Bongino. And my only fear for Bergy was, careful about InfoWars. If they get a hold of the story, they're going to steal the story and make it about them. They're going to steal the ShadowNet story, and people are going to forget all about what the actual NATO weaponizing one of their cyber tools that the American people paid for. Cyber tools the American people paid for to be used against Trump. Here's Trump, the United States government, giving money for these cyber weapons, and then these cyber weapons are turned around and used back against Trump, probably still being used against Trump. And who was the person giving the orders? The guy who was the head of the Atlantic Council, the guy who was the Supreme Allied Commander for NATO. That's the story, weaponizing cyber weapons. If you give it to InfoWars, they're going to make it about them. They're going to create some kind of trauma and drama. They're going to make it about them, which is exactly what they did. Poor Bergy, he went down to San Antonio, where InfoWars is based, thinking, hey, they're going to be launching this big documentary, and I'm the big star of the documentary. I'm going to have an Imran Awan motorcade into San Antonio. Everyone's going to, part ways at the University of Texas. I'm going to, they're going to rent out the University of Texas Longhorn Bowl there and have a big celebration. I'm going to drive in on my motorcycle, and there's going to be a 21 gun salute, and Alex Jones is going to come out and put a gold, a Medal of Honor around my neck for exposing this NATO weapon being used against the president of the United States, which I do believe he deserved that kind of hero's welcome. But what happened? What actually happened? Well, this gal named Torre was putting together the documentary. And she was collecting sources. And it turns out, I find that Harry the Greek has told me that almost all the pictures and interviews and clips came from reporting he did in February that were rolled up. And Millie Weaver, to her credit, she's a good correspondent spokesmodel. She does a good job. She doesn't know all the background of where this information is coming. So I'm not blaming Millie Weaver in this. But Torre was trying to contact me, and she had intermediaries trying to contact me in all this 2 weeks ago. Lee Wheelbarger, who I interviewed right here in this spot, was one of the people who said, hey, this Torre really wants to get a hold of you. Makes me think they wanted to give me the phone again, just like they gave Julian Assange the phone again for an entrapment scheme, for another lure. Seems to be John Brennan's modus operandi, to give people phones with classified information to get them in trouble. But we'll leave that speculation. But the key here is this Torre is putting together this documentary, okay? And she says she works for John Brennan. She says she developed the tracers. The tracers are technology that will track, let's say Imran Awan is making hard drives and copies of hard drives from the DNC server, and he's going to put them in his house, and he's going to destroy the original servers, and he's doing the same thing with the blackberries. A tracer is a little electronic bug that periodically reports back innocuously to a central server, so you can see what's going on. So you can trace, oh, it went from the DNC hard drive here, and then it went over to Imran's house on Hawkshead. Oh, that's where it is now. Oh, the BlackBerry just left and went, in this plane. Jeff Epstein just left for Africa with one of these. That's what the tracer is. Now, Torre says she developed the tracer, and she said the tracer goes all the way back. What you usually do is you disguise this tracer inside a program. So Windows has a ton of different programs, and you put it in one of those programs that Windows has. Nobody can figure out all of Windows, even the people who work for Microsoft. So that's usually what happens. But anyway, Torre says she developed the tracer. Torre says that she went into the DNC. Torre says she laid hands on the DNC server, if I get the gist right, in the documentary. Torre says she removed the real information. Torre says she suspects somebody else came in and put the false information to feed to Guccifer to create the DNC leaks. I might have that wrong, I might not, but I do remember her being interviewed by Alex Jones saying, I created the tracer. The same tracer, or the same Trojan horse, if you will, that went into Iran. Same one, same tracer and same tracking technology that went into Iran, Stuxnet, which basically fakes out a whole bunch of people that are watching a nuclear power plant. The reader board, the trouble board, the board that blinks red lights if something goes wrong. And it fakes them out. It makes everything think everything's okay. Meanwhile, it causes the centrifuges to spin too fast, and then 1,000 centrifuges go up in smoke. That's what happened in Iran. That was Stuxnet, Stuxnet. So she says she was involved in the development of this and worked for John Brennan, but now she hates John Brennan. Well, I knew that she worked for John Brennan, and I just didn't feel comfortable talking to her for this documentary. But what happens after that is they're going to launch this documentary. I think it was going to be launched tomorrow, or maybe today, Sunday. But for some reason, they decided to launch a little bit early on Thursday or Friday. I can't remember which day. But Bergy goes down there on his motorcycle. He's he has got the on his. I can't remember if it's a Harley or not, but I remember it was in his front driveway when I was there. Bergy does not live any extravagant means. He lives in a very, very modest house, and he's not faking anybody out. He's this true guy. That's the one thing that I believe. I believe in Bergy. I wouldn't have done fundraising for him if I didn't believe in Bergy. I believe he's a good guy, and I did everything but warn him that said, be careful who you give the story to, because they're going to steal it and make it about them, which is always what InfoWars does, isn't it? And especially Jerome Corsi. We know that about Jerome Corsi. So anyway, he gets down there and he can't even get anyone at InfoWars. Bergy gets there on the motorcycle after, the bumpy ride all the way through all the storms and everything, 100-degree heat. He gets down to San Antonio, and what happens? Nobody wants to talk to him. Bergy who? Oh, well, I was the guy who gave you the story about NATO weaponizing the shadow net, clear force. This is the thing that they're taking down all these elections all over the world, creating all these fake robots. This is the big story. Sorry, we never heard it. We don't know who the hell you are. We got something else running in Ohio right now on our schedule. We don't have any room for any Bergy. So Bergy shows up there and he's completely like, hey, what the hell's going on here? And now Bergy's going to Ohio. Well, in the meantime, as this documentary is being released, again, which is mostly shot from Harry the Greek's great work in February, the 3 articles that Harry the Greek did, they did a great job. Alex Jones did a great job cutting it up. I give him full kudos on cutting the documentary. It shows you what you can do with a budget and 3 satellites. But now we're going to make this about Ohio, and there's this viral video that happens in this timeline, which is Millie, the star spokesmodel. She's supposedly, this cop is on her porch, and they're talking about taking her into custody, and they're talking about, you need to get your shoes on. We need to take you into custody. There's a grand jury. A grand jury has indicted you and your husband, which Gary Wentz is not her husband. Her mother admitted to that this morning. And your brother, and you're all going to jail. Well, her mother, to cut to the chase, that video got about 300,000 views, or at least 250,000 views when I saw it. And everyone is, madly trying to get Millie out of jail in this Portage County in northeastern Ohio. That's supposedly the story. Well, I looked up Gary Wentz, and first of all, why is the last name different? You always wonder, what, Millie Weaver, Gary Wentz, why is that? And then he's 46 and she's 29, and then that's okay, that's fine. But then he's a pilot. He trained at Embry-Riddle. Embry-Riddle is where we went, said, hey, this is a big CIA pilot training area. We went down there when we were talking to Bergy. But he lives in Colorado Springs and in California, Huntington Beach. And I'm like, he's in Colorado Springs. She supposedly is in Akron, not Diamond, Ohio, where the arrest was. Diamond, Ohio is where the arrest was. Weaver is in about 30-40 miles away where she grew up. She lived in Stowe, Ohio, and Akron. And they're not married. So what's going on here? They're not married. Why are they saying they're married? And he doesn't live there. Why are they saying they live together? And why is Gavin Wentz telling Bergy that he's married to her? Bergy's being lied to. Bergy's being lied to that Millie has children. I'm not even sure Millie has children. Again, they're going to say this is all faulty reporting in the fog of war when this happens. But the mother came out today and said, oh, it was all over a cell phone. Oh, it happened way back. We had an argument, and there was a recording on the cell phone. Sounds like a Jason Goodman cell phone, because secret recordings, like Bergy was secretly recorded yesterday by Jason. But anyway, there was a cell phone where I did this secret recording in April, and I was real mad at her, and she took the phone because she didn't want the recording getting out, ruining my career on InfoWars, whatever. So this is posted. So I filed a police report on her. And then I thought about it, and I thought, well, she gave me the phone back, and then I dropped the case. And then 4 months later, with this blockbuster documentary that was stolen from Harry the Greek, as far as the research, and stolen from Bergy as far as the content, where they forgot about who actually were the sources. They wanted to make it a drama about InfoWars, right? That's when all this, these arrests happened, and then that's the fog of war. Those are all just gonna be mistakes, and it's all gonna be fog of war. Well, I was the one who was saying, hey, let's do the background checking. This is what real reporters do. They look people up and they go, hey, he doesn't live there. Hey, he's not married to her. Hey, Bergy, you're being lied to, right? And it turned out to be the case. So now we all know it's a hoax, okay? Now, why did the key question here is not InfoWars and hoaxing, right? The key question is, why are they hoaxing? And who's sponsoring this hoaxing? How could they get away with this hoaxing? I'm not saying a grand jury didn't meet. You know, you can get Larry Klayman together with three people at a coffee shop, and Larry Klayman will tell you that's a grand jury. It's a citizen's grand jury. And then they can swear out a warrant for your arrest on the back of a Starbucks nap. But that county has not had grand juries meeting since March. So if not, first of all, for a return cell phone, a fight between a mother and a daughter, very rarely would a grand jury meet about that topic. And very rarely, when the thing was resolved in April, would they bring it out of the woodwork in August, right? If they were going to arrest anybody who knew anything, they would arrest Bergy, okay? I'm not saying Bergy has done anything wrong. He hasn't done anything wrong. No classified information at all. But I'm just saying the thing stinks from the high heaven, because I think you're going to see that she was visiting her brother. She doesn't live in Diamond. Check the record. So all the reporting around this viral video was wrong, okay? She's not married. Don't believe she has children, and it's not her house, okay? So everything you've been led to believe about this thing's fake. Now, why? Because what really happened in Ohio? What really happened in Ohio is Libya and Syria. The weapons, the bioweapons for Libya and Syria, and these chemical weapons. Again, we're not speculating. Chemical weapons were used in Syria. We know at least two places. One was Ghouta, the other was Aleppo. We know that Battelle and Battelle Labs in Columbus is where they came from. Last time I checked, cylinders of bioweapons and chemical weapons can't fly by themselves to be deployed in Aleppo, coming from stores, wherever they're being stored. They have to either be shipped there or flown there. Who knows? Maybe they're flown there by a CIA pilot. Or they have to be trucked there to a port. Okay? So real reporting, this is where real reporting comes in, Alex. Real reporting is actually going to Columbus, Ohio, and finding a Farsi trucking company. Finding Farsi FBI agents that hate Trump and that are willing to execute an insurance policy against Trump, like Lisa Page, like the mother of Lisa Page, who is also Iranian, who also said that Melania Trump was a prostitute, also works for the Democratic Party, also works for the DNC, okay? Finding people who are on Capitol Hill who speak Urdu/Farsi, and finding the server of how you would construct putting these black weapons together and how you would hide putting these black weapons together to get them to places like Syria, Libya, Iran, North Korea, and all the other rogue nations of the world. That's the real story that's going on. I know it's hard for people to believe. There was a brief interview about Jason with the blackberries saying the George's story, my book that I have out now, which is Blackberries Matter, couldn't be true because it didn't have a green patch on the back. The BlackBerry he says was in the Senate didn't have a green DOD sticker on the back. I've never said it had a green DOD sticker. I've always showed a red Senate sticker. I always said it was a red Senate BlackBerry from Biden BlackBerry. I'll tell you a little bit about more information we've collected about that. Always said it was State Department. You have prime evidence with your own eyes that Hillary Clinton was given a classified BlackBerry with classified information by Huma Abedin right in front of your eyes. And you saw her get the information about Gaddafi being killed. You know the answer is going to be classified BlackBerries. You know it's going to be Huma in the network, Anthony Weiner's laptop in the network, and Hillary Clinton. You know that. There's no need to go any further with the story. That's why I wrote the book, Blackberries Matter, to tell that story. Now you're going to say, George, a lot of moving parts here, lots of stuff going on. You're saying that there's some intermediary in Ukraine. They're shipping it from the US to Canada, and Canada, NATO, over to Ukraine. Ukraine is holding it until they make a deal, and the Iran nuclear deal, all these other rogue nations. There's this guy named Kolomoisky that's this broker. He's the guy meeting with Braverman that you said from the beginning. It's all getting kind of complicated. Why don't you write a book about this? Well, you're in luck. I did. It's called Somewhere Under the Rainbow, and you can buy it for $1.99. It tells that story. And you're saying, okay, well, all right, you wrote a book. Great. You wrote 2 books. Great. It's going to totally answer the test. Great. Okay, fine. But what about now? What about the coronavirus now? What about NATO? What about these same people who were using cyber weapons in 2016? Why don't you tell us something about now, about them using them now in 2020, 2019? Well, you're in luck. That's what I do with YouTube's Finest Hour. YouTube's Finest Hour tells the story. A new book you can buy for 99 cents. Tells the story of exactly how NATO did that. How NATO perpetrated this, potentially a simulation, potentially something more than that this October for an October surprise. It tells the story exactly how that happened. Okay? The story is a little complicated here to tell the whole thing in one go. That's why I wrote the 3 books. You can get them. Again, Blackberries Matter, I think is $1.99. I've sold over 5,000 books. I never knew I was going to be an author until YouTube destroyed 4 years of work and 4,000 videos. I then published free 111 pages, 1,000 words a page. That was destroyed by Parler. That book was banned after it shot up to 2,000 sales, 1 minutes to midnight in 7 days. And then I had to start all over. So that's when I decided to write the book about a month ago. I started writing the books about a month ago, and they've already sold 5,000 copies. They're all bestsellers immediately. Probably the best buy of all of them is the thing that applies most to right now and every person in the world, which is forget all this hoaxing and InfoWars crap. What is affecting the world right now that people could benefit by right now to knock down this conspiracy right now? We talked about lighting up the network with the Blackberries Matter. We talked about the Kolomoisky connection with Somewhere Under the Rainbow. Operation Rainbow was the chemical weapon program in Vietnam. So it's all about chemical weapons. So that's that connection. And now we have YouTube's Finest Hour, which is the greatest hour in citizen journalism history, which solves the riddle of the NATO simulation for this bioweapon. So there you have it. You can put the hoax off to the side now. The mother's come clean. And now we can get to asking questions about Torre. Torre, hey, if you touch the DNC server, before the leak and you work for John Brennan, you hate him. When did you touch the server? What day did you touch the server? What location were you at where you touched the server? Tell me about everything that happened up until you getting to that server. Tell me everything you did, all the keys you hit while you were there on that server. As you were pulling off the information, did you put a tracer? When did you put the tracer on the DNC server? Because see, if I was John Brennan, I would want to put one of my operatives into the DNC. I would want to put one of my operatives into the DNC that did tracers. I would want one of my operatives to go in and take the real information off and put the fake information with the tracer in it so that I could track when these emails were given to different people in the Trump campaign. I would give them to intermediaries like OK and Wyansky, and I would give them to Peter Smith, and I would give them to other people like George Papadopoulos and Carter Page. Maybe some more that we don't know about. Wikistrat and Joel, what's his face? I can't remember Joel's last name at CEO of Wikistrat. And I would offer them all to the people of the Trump campaign. Wouldn't the tracer allow me to trace everyone who the emails went to? If OK and Wyansky gave information to Roger Stone as a sampler, wouldn't that be on Roger Stone's email? Wouldn't the sampler be on Paul Manafort's email if he was an informant? Wouldn't it be on Mike Flynn's, who might have inadvertently received the tracer? We need to find all out about the tracer. If Tori is the person who put the tracer into the DNC server, let's interview Tori and ask all about that. How does somebody go from working for John Brennan one day to being his biggest critic in this documentary the next? How does that happen? At what point did you become the whistleblower? Did you file a whistleblower complaint? Lots of questions we have. The beautiful thing about these hoaxes is they stimulate more questions and they identify more metadata for real investigators, real investigation. I'll give you just one example. It turns out that the investigator, the attorney in Northeast Ohio, Vig, it's like Viglieri. I can't remember exactly how you spell his name, but Vig, Vig, like, you take a trick in a card game, you get a Vig. Vig, the guy who's supposedly doing this arrest and supposedly did this grand jury and supposedly held this Larry Klayman coffee clutch grand jury, right? Whatever they did. I'd like to see the grand jury proceedings. He also turns out to be the guy who shut down the Roden trucking company and trucking murders, 8-way murder investigation. Now, I just find associations like that really and truly amazing. The guy up in Northeast Ohio, right, that is involved with this, now we know it's a hoax, up in Portage County, somehow is reporting directly to DeWine when he is the Attorney General. Now he's the governor. DeWine's the governor now. He was the Attorney General at the time of the Roden murders. Somehow he goes all the way down to Piketon, Ohio, to report on the 8-way murder. Remember, we have all the TEL, chemical weapons, biological weapons coming and going with two trucking companies there, the Wagners and the Rodens. Wagner supposedly committed the murders to kill the Rodens. But here's this guy from all the way up in Northeast Ohio coming down to Piketon to say, well, in my opinion, the Wagners did it by themselves. There wasn't a CIA assassin who went by the nom de guerre Stevie Steve. Stevie Steve wasn't there, even though Stevie Steve, the CIA assassin who was there, said he had killed 4 people up until the time of the Roden murders. And then very soon after was bragging about how he had killed 12 people. Okay. I actually had my hair cut by the person who cut his hair near Barberton, Ohio. He was up in that northeast corner of Ohio, but out toward Euclid. I remember it's out toward where I was born. Didn't have any help from the CIA assassin. Remember these 8 people? We went there and actually filmed this farm, if you recall. And it was off the road. It had a clear vista to one road in, one road out in both directions. You could see anybody coming. They had cameras all over the place. They're running an industrial drug operation. Right? We know that. DeWine admitted to that. DeWine, the guy who's governor now, was AG at the time. He admitted to an industrial drug operation. This is what I was told when I went to Piketon. By a law enforcement officer while the FBI was pinging my phone, and then I get really arrested for real. Okay, both directions. You could see for miles. We went and visited. Dogs everywhere, automatic weapons, searchlights, trip lights. Okay, and somehow the 2 brothers, not with it, don't even have. They raised horses. They were raising horses and laundering money through raising these giant draft horses. They're smart enough to go in there and murder 8 people in their sleep with no help, with no scopolamine, no fentanyl, no spraying, no special forces, extra tactics. They're smart enough to go in there and kill all 8 people. And what do we know about the Rodens and the Wagners? Hundreds of tickets for being overweight. Not physically overweight, but their trucks being physically overweight. Where were they going? Erie, Pennsylvania, right through this Portage County. Now, some people say that they were storing the weapons at Ukrainian churches up there, Kolomoisky's Ukrainian churches. Remember, Kolomoisky just got raided in Cleveland, a couple of 50 miles away. We don't know that to be true, what I had heard was there was a farm and barns being used to hold the cylinders, but we'll see if that's true. But we do know that we followed the trail. Like real investigators, instead of just making it about us and filming us, we actually went to the spots where the person was and collected the information, interviewed people. We went to the car dealership where Stevie Steve went. We went to the place where he worked with kids that were disability challenged kids. We went to it and we found out it was burned up, bombed out. We went to the other place he supposedly worked and interviewed people. We went to the car dealership where he supposedly got payoffs after he did a delivery, and we filmed it, and there was blood all over the walls. The couple that had owned the car dealership on 185th between Cleveland and Euclid had been murdered there, and there was blood all over the walls. Might that be someone who visited them for payoffs and now was trying to shut them up for an operation that failed? Could they have been shutting down this whole operation, which is incredibly politically sensitive, sending chemical and biological weapons from U.S. chemical weapons stores, however it got there, the Blackstone Express, who knows, shipping that to Libya and Syria to put your thumb on the scale for the side that you want to win, for the moderate Arabs that you want to win, is a big story. You better identify Farsi trucking companies. We did transport logistics, 5 different people in the company speaking Farsi. You better identify some back channel communicating on Capitol Hill that has speech and debate protection. We did, the Awans. Okay. You better identify some kind of cloaking device, some kind of secret communications device that would keep this away from the NSA. We sure did, the blackberries. You better come up with a fact witness that says that they saw that person put those things there in the house and stash them after Trump wins the election. We did. Andre Taggart. So, again, when InfoWars does these things, sometimes they tip over other parts of the real story, like this VIG. This VIG prosecutor is looking very, very suspicious. I think that's why they closed it down today, to be honest with you. They said, wait a minute, this is not going the way we want it to go. We want a whole bunch of hits and we want a whole bunch of super chat. And we're exposing our guy that was running the rat line from Piketon up to Erie, Pennsylvania. Oh, by the way, I went to the barbershop also in Cleveland, Cleveland Euclid, right there on 185th. The guys at the barbershop remember me asking about Stevie Steve, and we all know he went to Erie. He goes to Erie the next day. Yes, that's a different crime family. The Buffalo Erie crime family is different than the DeBartolo crime family that this stuff ran through in Akron. But he's murdered. He's murdered by the Pennsylvania State Police. Not too many people remember this, but again, following the real blood trail, following the real encrypted devices, following the real blood stains on the walls, going to the actual place of the murder. I think I'm still the only person in the United States that's actually went to the place where the Rodens were murdered. Doesn't that sound like you might do something like a cover-up if you were shipping biological and chemical weapons and then getting drugs as payment, using these proxies, these rodents that you think of as rodents to do the deal, and when you're done with the deal, you collapse the deal and you kill them? Isn't that kind of what sounded like what happened with Operation Cassandra? There you go. So there's a blessing in all this. Every time these panegyrics come round, I look for the silver lining. I look for that metadata, and we might just have it in our Mr. Vig. Thank you all. And we'll be coming to you live with some more information. I was going to go up to Ohio and see Harry the Greek. I was going to go through all the reporting and show how the Torre documentary mirrored all of his work. But now that I have the mother's kind of agreement or admission that it's sort of a hoax, that there would be never a grand jury for a stolen phone that was returned and charges dropped, there's really no reason to go up there. It's a waste of time. I feel bad for Bergy and all this. That's the one who I feel really bad. Oh, by the way, just remember, when you saw Hillary Clinton get that message about Gaddafi, did you see a green sticker on the back of the phone? That's because she wasn't DOD. Bergy's green sticker wasn't on the back of her phone because she wasn't DOD. She was the State Department. I never said they were DOD phones. I said they were State Department. not saying there weren't other DoD phones that Imran Awan might have had at his house. And Taggart said government markings. So we don't know the answer to that question yet. But we are on the right trail. If you don't start with that phone, with the Gaddafi murder, Huma giving that phone to Hillary, you don't start with the blackberries, you're on the wrong track. You're on the wrong track. That's why I wrote Blackberries Matter. That's why I wrote Somewhere Under the Rainbow about the chemical and biological weapons going to Kolomoisky. That's why I wrote YouTube's Finest Hour about the NATO simulation of this coronavirus. Thank you all.